one of the color timers said, hey, we're running Exorcist II. Do you want to go in the screening room and have a look at it? And I was over there doing something else, and I said, okay, sure. So I went in the screening room, and I see some guys riding on the back of a bumblebee or some fucking thing. It was unreal. And I left.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
It was horrible. Utterly horrible. And fascinating.
What the fuck is this guy talking about?
Released half a century ago, on December 26, 1973, The Exorcist took the world by storm, rightfully earning the title of scariest film ever made.
But the thing that really surprises me is people faint. I mean, I've never in my life known a movie where people would faint. I mean, it's hard to make people faint.
I can't even describe it. It's so horrible.
Oh my God, I've never seen anything like it.
The author had to be part of the devil himself to think of such ideas.
Directed by charismatic insane man William Friedkin.
Do you want to comment on that?
Sure, who said that? First, let's talk about who said it.
Okay, it has been said in some reviews.
By who?
Film critics.
Which one?
Okay, I don't have specifics with me, but...
Rest in peace. And written by William Peter Blatty. Rest in peace. The film was a cultural phenomenon, to say the least. It was the first horror film to be nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards, and 9 others, and is still Warner Brothers' highest grossing film of all time, adjusted for inflation. Countless video essays, parodies, and knockoffs have sent this film into the stratosphere of the zeitgeist. But we're not here to talk about this masterpiece today. Oh no. Released 4 years later in 1977, Exorcist II, The Heretic was released to extremely negative response, landing a 9% on Rotten Tomatoes. But how could this happen? Friedkin and Blatty wanted nothing to do with an Exorcist sequel, mainly over lawsuits against the studio and, funny enough, each other, over profits, credits, and Blatty being barred from post-production during the first film.
I think what we should probably do with this new version is have you come on at the end and say to the audience, this film's not a downer, folks. This is not a downer.
I'm ready.
Okay.
Co-producer Richard Lederer says the film was originally conceived as a low-budget remake of the original, featuring unused footage and angles from the original film, with the same plot beats and storylines, and, in his words, a rather cynical approach to movie making. Yeah, I'd say so. Fortunately, this is not the approach they ended up greenlighting. Many of the actors reprised their role from the original, including Linda Blair as Reagan McNeil, Max von Sydow as Father Merrin, and Kitty Wynn as Sharon Spencer. The film also stars some heavy hitters, including Richard Burton from Cleopatra, Louise Fletcher, hot off her Oscar win from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and James Earl Jones, who, thanks to the Disney overlords and AI technology, will be the voice of Darth Vader forever. Yippee!
How dare anyone not allow Disney to maintain their media monopoly on every character ever created?
Especially with how wonderfully they've handled Star Wars.
Okay, we have our cast. Very solid. But what about the production team behind it? The film was directed by John Boorman, director of Deliverance, the movie with, you know, that scene.
Squeal! Squeal!
Which got him 2 Oscar nominations. The film was written by William Goodhart, and according to the cast, the script was amazing when they first read it.
Finally one day, the script appears, and I felt like, wow, this project it's amazing. It's perfect, it's fabulous.
But this is where things begin to fall apart. Boorman became unhappy with Goodhart's script, asking for rewrites. After Goodhart refused, Boorman and Rospo Pollenberg constantly rewrote the script during production.
We basically just kept working on the script, and then they started making changes. And as the changes came, we still kind of didn't know what was about to happen because nobody did.
Just too many cooks in the goddamn kitchen. The film was eventually released on June 17th, 1977, marking Warner Brothers' largest opening with 725 theaters in the US and Canada. While the film set records and eventually turned a profit, word of mouth started to get around. When asked if he had seen the film, Friedkin had this to say.
Are you putting me on Bumblebee?
Ironically enough, Exorcist II was released a week prior to Friedkin's underrated masterpiece, Sorcerer, which was a box office bomb and critically mixed at the time as well. Luckily, that film has had a sort of renaissance in the past few decades, but this film, not so much. Exorcist II was critically panned by major critics and audiences alike, landing the film its own entry in the Wikipedia page List of Films Considered the Worst. So, for a film this notoriously hated, let's take a look and see how bad it actually is. Shall we? Exorcist II: The Heretic opens in a similar fashion to The Exorcist, with the iconic red text, an atmospheric score with vocalizations in a foreign language,
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
but this time it's a woman. Now, I won't be going back and forth between both films with a fine-tooth comb like I've done in the past, but there are moments within this film so obviously banking on the iconography and themes of the first film that it bears mentioning, as well as moments so obviously trying not to be the first film that also bears mentioning. You'll see what I mean in a minute. The film begins with our introduction to Father Lamont, who was initially supposed to be the character of Father Dyer from the first movie, but actor William O'Malley was busy and couldn't take the role. Wise choice. Anyways, Father Lamont is brought to South America to investigate a Spanish woman who seems to be under possession. Within his Bible is a picture of the late Father Marin, who perished at the end of the first film, calling to him from the grave.
Father Marin, in the valley of the shadow of death, be at my side.
It's established here that Lamont has a really weird obsession with Father Marin, continually name-dropping him, just to make people aware that this is in fact a sequel to The Exorcist, if that wasn't already fucking apparent. Lamont throws holy water on the possessed girl, muttering to herself in Spanish. It's revealed that she's a healer of sorts, spoken in English now? Why would she be speaking in English? Especially after he's shown speaking Spanish here too.
Silencio, silencio.
Is it really so they didn't have to make the audience read subtitles like the first film? Jesus fucking Christ, this is already so lazy. The girl starts freaking out, wiggling out of her clutches, and begins throwing lit candles everywhere. She dons the Christ the Redeemer pose as her gown lights ablaze, her body slowly cooking alive, nerve endings charring, until we hard cut to Reagan tap dancing now.
So John Borman comes to me and he said, I think Reagan should tap dance. What?
I literally have no idea why this choice was made for this film. It doesn't make any fucking sense, and actually actively clashes with the film tonally. At points, it's an Exorcist-esque psychological drama, then turns into an abstract hypnosis dreamscape, then turns into a globe-trotting flick, throw in some psychic telecommunication across the entire globe, demonic seduction via a minor, and fucking tap dancing, and you get Exorcist II: Electric Boogaloo.
What?
Reagan has a little tap dancing session until we're introduced to the alternate timeline version of Nurse Ratched, where she uses her skills for good rather than ice pick lobotomies. I want to mention how fucking bizarre this office space is. All the windows are wide open, no one has any privacy, it's spacious and claustrophobic at the same time. All these kids just push an octagon around all day, all the rooms are hexagons, and they even have sci-fi sliding doors too? What is this fucking place? Nurse Ratched and Reagan have a little therapy session, where it's revealed that the only reason Reagan comes here is to make her mom feel better. She claims that she doesn't remember anything from Georgetown, only that she was very sick and having nightmares.
Those bad dreams are still inside you.
There's nothing wrong with me.
We are then introduced to the infamous hypnosis device, which doesn't have any consistency in its rules or function throughout the film. Nurse Ratched explains that when using the device, they can come down to a deep state of hypnosis and watch Reagan's dreams together. Somehow.
How do you feel about that?
I don't think you're ready for it.
We meet back with Father Lamont, who is given the task of investigating the death of Father Marin 4 years after the fact. So apparently, Marin is facing posthumous heresy charges because of his writings and research into exorcisms, as the church no longer wants to acknowledge Satan anymore.
Satan has become an embarrassment to our progressive views.
Progressive views. Oh, really?
Marin was rather more extreme, I'm afraid. He argued that the power of evil threatens to overthrow the power of God himself.
Well, he wasn't wrong, was he? He was pretty justified, if you ask me. The Cardinal claims that others in the church say that he died at the hands of the devil during the Georgetown exorcism, and that he was somehow a Satanist at the end. How would getting killed by the devil make you a Satanist? Can someone explain this to me, please?
Today, wherever I look, I see only evil. God has fallen silent.
Alright, so are we gonna accuse him of being a Satanist too? Isn't that the gist of what you've been saying this entire time? That Marin was a heretic who believed evil will overthrow the power of God himself? He basically just said that God has fallen silent and that there's evil everywhere. The Cardinal doesn't seem to care, telling Lamont that he will conduct the investigation of Marin's death during the exorcism, reporting to him and him alone. Back at the facility, Lamont stares at all the patients playing with their little knickknacks and doodads, awkwardly staring at Reagan for far too long, until Nurse Ratched brings him into her office.
Liz, what does he want?
How would I know, Reagan?
He's here about me, isn't he?
Why, yes. Yes, he is. Lamont tells Nurse Ratched that he would like to question Reagan about the incident, but she denies it, saying that the guilt from the deaths of the exorcism may have repressed her memories, and that the shock of recall can induce self-punishment.
You realize what you're up against, don't you?
What am I up against, Father?
Evil.
Alright, so here's a great time to mention that Father Lamont is a fucking crazy person. He's almost the exact opposite of Father Karras in the first film, who struggles with losing his mother and faith, and only agrees to help perform an exorcism on Reagan out of the sheer desperation and pleading from her mother, who has tried every single medical treatment and test, and in a last-ditch effort, turns to the priests of a religion that she doesn't even believe in. Karras heavily advises seeking out professional help from the very beginning, as exorcisms are a thing of the past that the church is embarrassed by.
Yes, I could see her as a psychiatrist, but I can't see
Oh, not
her.
a psychiatrist. She needs a priest. She's already seen every fucking psychiatrist in the world, and they sent me to you. Now you're gonna send me back to them?
Lamont, on the other hand, comes out guns a-blazing, saying Reagan is an evil witch and needs to be exorcised again immediately.
Evil is a spiritual being, alive and living, perverted and perverting, weaving its way insidiously into the very fabric of life.
Do you see what I mean? These are the preachings of a cult leader calling upon the end times, fear-mongering an already brainwashed society. We don't even know if she's possessed again. She doesn't remember anything. There's absolutely no reason for you to come to this conclusion this early on in the story. Reagan comes bursting in, saying that she's willing to try the hypnosis machine. After a brief introduction, the three of them will meet up again tomorrow to try the machine out. Sharon Spencer is now introduced, attempting to give another connection to the original film, after Ellen Burstyn flat out refused to come back, who acts as Reagan's guardian when her mother is away for work.
But it's merely an illusion, a projection of the mind.
Okay, I guess the scene was only here to set up this scene, fucking instantaneously. Nurse Ratched gives some medical jargon to reiterate that two participants will go into hypnosis together, and from there, can look into one of their dreams in real time. Again, this does not follow its own rules, even in this scene. She tells Reagan that after the alarm buzzes, she will wake up and remember nothing, giving us the first filmed version of that fucking Ahego face, while getting sent down to a state of hypnosis. Nurse Ratched asks Reagan to try and see her room from Georgetown.
And I want you to go deeper, Reagan. Deeper, 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 deeper. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Eventually getting there. Then she asks Reagan to help her get down to a state of hypnosis by someone already under hypnosis.
Can you hear me, Jean?
Yes.
Deeper, 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 deeper. Good.
Eventually getting there.
Dr. Tuscan, can you see Reagan's room?
Yes.
Lamont begins asking Reagan questions about Father Marin.
Is his heart strong, resolved? Is he in pain? Is he casting out the unclean spirit? What are you doing?
Suddenly, Nurse Ratched starts freaking out.
What's wrong with Jean?
Her heart, it's fibrillating. Put that back on, Reagan. You've got to go back.
I know where she is. Help me to find her.
What? how the fuck do you know where she is? This doesn't make sense for a number of reasons. One, you were never even at the original exorcism, so how could you possibly know what she's seeing? And two, this is Reagan's dream, right? How is Nurse Ratched still there if Reagan isn't even connected to the machine? And three, how the fuck is Lamont gonna get there too? Reagan, while hypnotized, had to hypnotize Nurse Ratched to bring her down to her subconscious level. And if Nurse Ratched can't do that right now, how will Lamont reach there too? To a place in Reagan's subconscious that she isn't even connected to, which neither Lamont nor Liz have any idea how to get there since Ratched is nonverbal, then Liz somehow takes him down to that subconscious level? Why isn't Reagan the one taking him down there? She's the only one who knows. It's her dream. What the fuck is happening? As Lamont gets taken down, Reagan cops a feel from Nurse Ratched as Demon Reagan appears, and Father Merrin. Yippee! So now Lamont is witnessing the dream, or rather suppressed memories of when Reagan was possessed, with Father Merrin exorcising her. Somehow, even though she's not hooked up to the fucking machine,
She's mine, always. No!
Reagan pleads and pleads for him to bring Nurse Ratched back, but all I can see is the scene from Scary Movie 2.
Who sent your only son into the world to crush that roaring tiger?
Fuck me! Fuck me!
It seriously looks like a fucking parody. It's crazy. The two Reagans start holding hands as Father Merrin and Nurse Ratched's face are superimposed over each other, which is supposed to be a metaphor, I guess? Or rather, trying to communicate that the demon that killed Merrin is trying to kill Ratched now too, in the memory of an event 4 years ago. Then the two Reagans really start going at it. Quite literally, fingering her heart. The scene is so fucking weird, it blows my mind. Lamont discovers that the demon in Reagan killed Merrin via a psychically induced heart attack of some kind, which after finding out, Nurse Ratched is released from her clutches. Lamont then brings her back out, telling her not to remember anything, which is a terrible idea, which comes to bite him in the ass later.
He told you not to remember.
Do you remember?
No.
Do you remember?
Wouldn't you want at least one other person to remember the crazy shit that just went on if this actually happened, to even slightly give some credibility to your claims? Reagan and, you know what, I'm tired of calling her Nurse Ratched. I'm just gonna call her Jean for the rest of the review. That's her name in the movie. Jean, leave, watching over Reagan as she draws a face, which surely won't be creepy or spark anything in the story at all. Back with Jean and Lamont, he tells her that Father Merrin was killed, but not by Reagan.
That wasn't the mind of a child. It was horrible. Utterly horrible. And fascinating.
A fourth wall break? Really? That's an interesting choice. Jean comes back to explain that since the hypnosis technology is so new, all of what they saw was essentially unverifiable as memories, and could possibly just be dreams, fantasy, or hallucinations. Wish you made her remember now, don't you? As Jean leaves to go make her rounds, Lynn shows Lamont the picture that Reagan drew of him, which officially sends him off the rails.
Doctor, the flames. They're getting bigger. We've got to put the fire out. No, you've got to help me. We may be too late. We may be too late.
Where are you going?
You've got to help me.
What the fuck is this guy talking about?
They head down to the basement, with Lamont ranting about a fire somewhere, which he actually finds. As Jean leaves to go get a fire extinguisher, he uses a single crutch to waft the fire out. I mean, are you really that incompetent? Jesus fucking Christ, he looks so goofy. Jean eventually puts the fire out and reconvenes with Lamont outside.
Reagan's picture. The flames. She warned us. That contact between us came about through your machine.
Lamont starts going off on how incredible and important Jean's hypnosis machine is, saying that it proved, scientifically, that there is an ancient demon still locked away within Reagan, which no one else fucking knows about or can verify.
Do you remember?
No.
And completely nulls the original film's message. Evil did win in the end. All of the sacrifices that were made are fucking worthless. Father Karras's entire arc in the film? Pointless. Blatty was so precious of his work, and it's one of the reasons why he and Friedkin bickered about the final cut of the film. He wanted the audience to concretely know that the devil didn't win.
I don't want him to think the devil won. It allows the audience to not despise itself for loving all of that shock and all of that obscenity and all of that torture of the little girl and the crucifix masturbation, all of that. They can enjoy the film for what it is and not revile themselves for enjoying it.
Well, to me, it's how could they possibly think that?
Evil.
Believe it or not, I was trying to help her before you came along.
You must let me get into sync with Reagan. In that way, you can control things.
Something they should have done from the very beginning. He goes on to say that there's no need to worry about shocking Reagan with recovering these repressed memories, as she still remembers everything. Reagan sleeps in her apartment as demonic whispers call out her name, transporting us to the plains of Africa, where we are introduced to a young Father Merrin, as well as goofy-looking optical shots of locusts.
Bumblebee?
The village is being swarmed by locusts as Reagan tosses around in her bed, as we are shown literal locust whisperers. This becomes a major theme in the film, by the way. These vision locust whisperers must have put her in a trance, because Reagan begins walking out to the balcony of her apartment, dangling her feet over the edge of the building, and apparently with no stunt double or special effects. That's pretty fucking negligent, isn't it? Knowing this makes this scene quite unironically terrifying. Sharon runs from her room to check if Reagan fell from the Freedom Tower, who apparently made friends with the pigeons. It is soon revealed that Sharon will be going to Washington, the location from the first film.
I'll be back in a few hours.
Washington?
But just some things your mother didn't have time to do before she went on location.
Which doesn't make any sense. The original house from the film was a rental to stay at while Chris was working on her film with Burke Dennings. They completely moved out of it at the end of the film, and this is now 4 years after the fact, and they still have shit in there. Or is it merely an excuse to shove in more, hey, remember this? Elements from the first film in here. So, shocker, Sharon meets up with Lamont at the iconic Exorcist steps in Georgetown, which apparently had to be replicated as the Washington officials wouldn't allow them to film at the actual location, as well as the house, which had to be filmed in the Warner Brothers backlots on a set. Anyways, the two make it inside as Lamont starts asking questions about the exorcism.
Did Father Merrin ever name the demon?
No. It knew him, though.
Rule number 1, do not name the demon. It nearly always sounds goofy and breaks all tension.
Named Bagul, the eater of children.
Did you say eater?
Yes, of children.
Lamont and Sharon exchange some wooden dialogue as she leads him up to the bedroom where it all took place, with a giant locust just hanging out in the room. He gets on his knees to pray for Merrin, Sharon, and himself. But fuck Reagan, I guess. Back at the facility, there's a really weird scene between Jean and Lamont where Jean starts getting a little flirty.
Don't you ever need a woman, Father? It's hard to live alone.
You seem to manage.
I'd like to spend more time with them.
Your heart is good.
Don't you ever need a woman, Father?
Yes.
Reagan comes barging in, you fucking cockblock, leading us to another hypnosis scene. Now Jean conducts the test, putting Reagan and Lamont in the hot seat, somehow sending us back to Africa in a narration from Father Merrin.
It was long ago, when I was studying the holy men of Africa.
So it turns out that vision from earlier was actually a memory of Father Merrin's. But if you're wondering how we're witnessing Merrin's memory through Reagan's subconscious, it's because it's actually not Merrin's. It's the demons, meaning that Lamont has been right this entire time and a demon is locked away somewhere within Reagan. Anyways, he goes on to describe a boy who has magical powers that can fight off the locusts, but the locusts themselves might come because of the boy, asking philosophical questions like,
does great goodness draw evil upon itself?
Until Merrin witnesses the boy fall down and be consumed by locusts, and... Alright, just say the fucking line.
I am Zuzu.
It actually always sounds goofy. Do not do this.
Bagul, the eater of children.
Reagan must have gotten into roleplay over the past few years as she tells Lamont to call her by her pet name.
Call me by my dream name.
I mean dream name.
Bazuzu.
That chanting from the beginning of the film makes another appearance as we sweep through shoddy miniatures, revealing Merrin carrying this boy up the sheer face of a rock? Is this how they get everything up here? How the fuck did you manage to build this? It's so dangerous. See? Oh man, the combination of these terrible opticals, obvious suspension on wire, shooting on a higher frame rate, and the use of a dummy is just so awkwardly done, I love it. Inside the temple, Merrin gives an exorcism to the young boy, and, through the power of editing, transforms him back to normal. We then get a voiceover from Pazuzu himself.
Merrin defeated you.
No. In his own place of power, he gained a little time.
That's all.
Pazuzu tells us that even now, he could claim Kokumo, revealing that the boy is still alive. Then Lamont joins Pazuzu on a spiritual ride across Africa via LOCUST, who represent Pazuzu if you haven't already picked up on that, with some crazy helicopter shots. We zoom through this African village until James Earl Jones emerges from his house, defiantly roaring at Pazuzu? What the fuck is going on? The two break out of their hypnosis session, Lamont exclaiming that Kokumo is still alive and maybe he could find him. Reagan leaves the room, leaving Jean and Lamont alone to have more awkward wooden sex than Burton's performance. This interaction is just so uncomfortable and has extremely weird connotations.
What's the matter with you? I'm How do you mean? How do you mean?
Ooh boy! The girl eventually asks what's wrong with Reagan, who just bluntly lays it all out there.
I was possessed by a demon. Oh, it's okay. He's gone.
I don't know, lady. Lamont seems pretty fucking determined that Pazuzu is still somewhere inside you, and based on that last hypnosis session, I'm pretty sure he's correct. Alright, so remember the weird connotations I was talking about earlier? Here's an example.
Can you hear me, Mother?
She's talking.
Yep, you've heard it here first, folks. Reagan can cure non-verbal autism. Or is it Pazuzu? I mean, regardless, she's like the second coming of Christ. Someone bring out the sick and lame, we have a miracle worker on our hands. Even Reagan recognizes this and asks to help the other kids in the facility, but Jean shuts it down for some reason.
You know, Reagan, it's really very dangerous to fool around with other people's heads.
Excuse me, lady, but aren't you literally entering Reagan's head and looking around in there? Letting Lamont chop through memories with a machete to find a fucking demon inside of her? What gives you the right? As Reagan leaves, Lamont and Jean start getting into it.
Now, I don't want to hear any of your wild
So what happened? She
speculations.
entered that child's mind and got her talking.
Let's stick to science.
Don't hide behind science, you're better than that.
What a fucking line. Holy shit. Do you see what I mean by that Lamont is the exact opposite of Karis? Like, nah, fuck science, this is a holy war. Which, I mean, he's technically correct, but it doesn't make him sound any less of an insane person.
Demons. We make our own demons up here. You're obsessed with the idea.
I'm not obsessed, I'm not. I admit that I'm fascinated, but I know the dangers. Father Merrin himself was afraid that he'd slip into admiration.
You sound psychotic. Jean storms off as Lamont walks out of the building. I guess the sex was that wooden, eh? Sometime later, Reagan surprises Lamont at the museum. Somehow, as Lamont didn't even know that she was coming, they talk about ESP, or extrasensory perception, like telepathy and clairvoyance, and whether or not priests believe in it. It's all pretty fucking boring, but acts as a justification for certain scenes later in the film, I guess. This is the only reason why I'm mentioning it here. Anyways, they conveniently come across the exact temple where Father Merrin conducted the exorcism. And it's also revealed that Reagan does remember everything, and that this whole time she's been lying to Jean.
What else do you remember?
Everything.
Lamont goes to the Cardinal, explaining that he needs to go to Africa right away, as if he can find Kokumo, it would prove that the exorcisms were valid, thereby saving Merrin from posthumous heresy charges. But then for seemingly no reason, it gets twisted into one of those loose cannon cop scenes.
I've asked you to investigate the exorcisms of Father Merrin, not to step into his shoes.
He's doing exactly what you asked him to do. Investigate the exorcisms of Father Merrin, which also happened in Africa. Yeah, he comes off a little insane sometimes, but he's literally just doing the job at hand.
I have no choice but to relieve you of your assignment. You will refrain from any further action.
I want your gun and your badge.
Oh,
my
you're
priest-
a loose cannon.
That was that scene, by the way. It was.
Made no sense.
Despite Lamont getting kicked off the job, he decides to globetrot to the temple in Africa anyways. How he even got here, I haven't the slightest idea. Did he just fund the trip by himself? There's no way the church is funding this excursion. He just got fired.
I want your gun and your badge.
Oh!
He eventually makes it up the cliff, entering the chapel accompanied by dozens of chanting worshippers, complete with a gingerbread man and grape juice. During the communion, Lamont confesses that he has mortal sin, disobedience, and pride, but that evil overwhelms us, and that he had to disobey. Back in America, Jean gives Reagan a visit on the roof. She just loves hanging out up here, eh? Reagan starts going off about wanting to help Lamont, and that she could reach him in NSYNC. But Jean won't allow her to do it. I wonder if this is gonna come back up later. Back in Africa, Lamont asks if there's anyone who would have remembered Father Merrin, or Kokumo, until they randomly start talking about the monk who died earlier from when Marin gave the exorcism. They say his body was never recovered, but Lamont is sure that it bounced off a rock down there or something. So then he goes all the way back down the cliff to find the body of a monk that died like 40 years ago, and hard cut to Regan tap dancing. It's almost like the filmmakers are deliberately trying to ruin any sense of tone within this movie. It's really fucking bizarre.
Regan don't tap dance. I hated it. I hated it.
Another hard cut back to Lamont as he shows the other monks where the body is located.
How did you know the body was here?
He was killed by Pazuzu, a very powerful demon.
Once the monks hear the name Pazuzu, they all start freaking out, running away from him and calling him a devil worshipper, then begin pelting him with rocks, which somehow affects Regan during her tap dancing routine. The more Lamont is pelted with rocks, the more Regan starts freaking out and falling over. Are they implying that they're in sync? It's gonna be me. Somehow? Like what Regan and Jean were talking about on the roof? How? Jean wouldn't let her do it, or teach her how. Or is it an ESP experience like they talked about in the museum for 2 seconds? Or is it the Pazuzu deep within Regan that's getting metaphorically pelted with rocks because Lamont is there actually getting pelted with rocks? I don't fucking understand what's going on. Even though Lamont successfully gets into a Jeep and drives away, Regan still falls over and seizes out on the ground. Presumably later that night, Regan begs Jean not to put her under, as it will stop her from dreaming.
Trying to kill my soul.
Whatever that means. Back in Africa, some dude carrying a cross finally gets the plot moving.
Mud City with golden walls? Sounds like Gypsy.
You know it?
I know every holy place in Africa.
The two take a plane ride to the Mud City, where Lamont again can't help but schizopost.
I've flown this route before. It was on the wings of a demon.
Did he take you to Gypsy?
Lamont wanders around the Mud City for a while, mumbling Kokumo over and over again, as villagers lead him down this narrow alley just for... What is the fucking point of this? Lay epic troll, my dear Redditor, here's some tits. Later on, Lamont continues to mumble to himself, saying he must find Kokumo, and that he has resisted calling upon Pazuzu. Literally 20 seconds later, Regan easily pulls it out of him.
Call me.
Regan.
Call me by my dream name.
Pazuzu, prince of the evil spirits of the air. Take me to Kokumo.
Jesus Christ, man, there was like no resistance there. Now in sync. The two keep repeating Kokumo over and over and over until Lamont enters his house, where he's dressed like a giant locust. This scene is really fucking weird. Have I said that enough? Or that they don't make any sense? They imply that Lamont has lost his faith because he called upon Pazuzu. So in order to prove his faith, Lamont needs to cross over this pit of nails for some reason.
Step out of your despair. If Pazuzu comes for you, I will spit a leopard.
Then pops out a tomato from his mouth? This is fucking nonsense. And because Lamont can't walk on air, he of course falls into the pit, which...
Can I help you?
I fell. I failed.
Alright, was that entire thing a dream sequence? Or an illusion of some kind? Was there really a test of faith?
I don't give a flying fuck into a rolling donut. Is that an answer to your question?
So it turns out Kokumo is actually a leading scientist in the field of locust research, and that he's just really into cosplay. They discuss how Father Marin was killed by Pazuzu, and how Kokumo was once possessed by Pazuzu as well. Kokumo starts going into the psychology of locust, how they become a destructive force when their wings flap together, and how they're trying to make a good locust, and that this will...
The good locust.
Sorry. I was dozing off there for a moment. Oh, we're back with Regan. Cool.
Hey, Regan, where do you think you're going?
It's okay.
No, it's not. Go get her. Why are you just letting her walk out of the facility? Jean gets a call but ignores it, leaving Sharon to run seemingly directly out of the shower to grab her phone that's ringing. Is this just an excuse to get a wet t-shirt contest kind of vibe going? Gotta get some nips in the movie somehow. Anyways, Sharon learns that Regan has left the facility, only to get interrupted by a buzz at the door, revealing Lamont just blankly staring at her. Did he even know the cameras were rolling here?
It's all your fault. Regan is very sick. You stirred it all up. She's run away from the hospital. God knows where she is.
I can help her. Only I can help her.
Leave us alone! We don't want to hear about demons or God or anything. Just get out of here.
I'm not even sure who's in the right here. On one hand, Reagan seemed perfectly fine in the beginning, but then Lamont came around and stirred up Pazuzu within Reagan, even metaphorically brushing wings with the demon in Africa to find Kokumo, who vaguely described the good locust concept that can calm down the other locusts and not turn them into a destructive swarm, the good versus evil within Reagan via Pazuzu. But now, when it's essentially proven that there is something wrong with Reagan, Jean and Sharon are telling Lamont to fuck off. So even though Lamont comes off as a lunatic, he's technically in the right? Didn't I tell you that making everyone forget the memories within Reagan is a terrible fucking idea, you Okay, I know this is a lot, but we're almost at the end, so just hang in there. Reagan returns to the museum from earlier, hoping to find Lamont, which of course she does. Lamont tells Reagan that he was able to find Kokumo, saying,
Good and evil are struggling within you. You must fight.
Which touches upon that good locust thing that I was talking about earlier. Also, Reagan just happened to sneak the hypnosis machine out of the facility. Jean and Sharon plan to track down Reagan and Lamont as they make their way into a hotel room, setting up the machine. Which makes me wonder, why would they even need this anymore if they were already in sync while not even using the machine? That's the whole reason they could communicate on entirely separate continents, right?
Pazuzu will brush me with his wings.
He already did. Lamont puts the device on, bringing the two of them down to a deep state of hypnosis, which doesn't have anyone to bring them out of, by the way. As we travel down various states of consciousness, Father Merrin begins to narrate the motivations of Pazuzu, essentially saying that Satan has sent Pazuzu to possess those who ward off against evil and heal the sick, like that Spanish woman from the beginning, and that Merrin entrusts Lamont to take care of Reagan, to keep her safe and defeat Pazuzu, giving us some warped helicopter shots and a final sting of the door to Reagan's room from the original, and
Father?
okay, how did she wake up from that? She's in a state of hypnosis. Oh my god, this hurts my brain. Lamont gets up, not saying a word, rushing out of the room. He continues giving the silent treatment as they wander around a crowded street in New York, with Jean and Sharon discovering that the hypnosis machine is gone. Down in the subways, Reagan calls Jean, letting her know that he's heading back to the Georgetown house from the original. Just have to keep going back there, eh?
Reagan, don't go with him.
Look, I have to. It's my fault. He's doing it for me. Bye.
Stupid bitch.
So now the third act of this movie begins with a rush to the Georgetown house. For some reason, Reagan barely makes it back into the subway, wading through the different cars until she finally finds Lamont, still giving the stupid silent treatment. Was he too drunk to remember any of his lines?
Leave her alone. She belongs to me.
I guess not, but not really.
He is talking in his voices and things, and he's looking from here, and then he's over here, and he's looking over there, and then there's over there, and then, anyway, he's reading cue cards.
Well, that explains a lot from his performance here, and that he likely was drunk while filming. On the way to the Georgetown house, Jean and Sharon are stopped and interrupted numerous times in a way to add tension, but it just comes off as annoying and conveniently inconvenient. It's not clever. Pretty fucking lazy, actually. Jean randomly gets out of the car to help a guy who's been in a car accident. These guys cut in front of her and steal her taxi, then they get pulled over as well. Like, oh no guys, are they gonna make it in time or what? I'm so scared. Meanwhile, Lamont reads off his cue cards again, mumbling about the good locust, yelling at this bus driver eating a hoagie or something, until they finally reach the house in the Warner Brothers backlot. I mean, Georgetown. Lamont breaks into the house, running up the stairs to the bedroom as the girls get closer, until Lamont is attacked by locusts and the taxi driver gets into an accident. Then Lamont crashes into the wall as the girls crash into the house. Sharon gets out of the car, leaving Jean trapped inside, then proceeds to start acting very strangely.
At least help Reagan.
To do what?
To buy this thing.
Name it.
Pazuzu.
Fucking really? Are you telling me that Sharon is possessed now too? Is that what the seemingly throwaway line was referring to?
That evil face. I couldn't bear to be near her afterwards. 2 years I stayed away. 2 haunted years gone out of my mind. Finally I came back and found that when I'm with her is the only time I'm at peace.
I guess Pazuzu just couldn't help themselves and possessed Sharon for trying to help Reagan. Wait a sec. What about Reagan? The locusts have seemed to calm down as Reagan slowly walks up the steps, noticing Lamont sitting up against the wall, pointing at her old bedroom door. As she approaches, a familiar sight is to be beheld.
Remember the first movie?
Lamont must have also gotten possessed by Pazuzu, as he starts manhandling Reagan, until
He's mine. He's chosen me. Pazuzu's Reagan is the only Reagan.
Alright, pause. Let's talk about a couple things here. Firstly, who is that? Like, literally, who the fuck is in this room with them? Is it a metaphorical demonic Reagan? And why doesn't the demonic Reagan look anywhere remotely similar to Linda Blair? Well, I only have answers for the latter, as the former begins to crumble quite quickly. Apparently, when Linda Blair signed on to do the film in the first place, she refused to wear the demon makeup again, so some random lady became her demon stand-in. That's why it looks so bad and jarring during the hypnosis scenes too, coming off more as a parody than an actual movie. Secondly, let's talk about Pazuzu's voice, as I've been neglecting talking about it this entire time. In Exorcist II, Karen Knapp voices Pazuzu, while in the original film, Mercedes McCambridge was hired to do the iconic voice. And the story behind how she achieved this is quite interesting. While preparing to do the voice, McCambridge had some unique methods to get into character.
She said I should swallow raw eggs, I should smoke cigarettes constantly, and you gotta give me some booze, which is gonna make me nuts, and I'm getting off the wagon to do this.
They tore up a sheet and put me in restraints with around my neck, and my arms behind the chair, and my knees, and my feet, so that I would feel like Linda Blair, whom I've never met, while she was carrying on in the bed, that I would be doing the same thing physically.
So, with all this preparation, let's see a compare and contrast on how this affected the tone and mood of the original film, bouncing off of Blair's original recording and McCambridge's dub.
What an excellent day for an exorcism.
What an excellent day for an exorcism.
And I'm the devil! Now kindly undo these straps.
And I'm the devil! Now kindly undo these straps!
Your mother's in here with us, Karis. Would you like to leave a message? I'll see that she gets it.
Your mother's in here with us, Karis. Would you like to leave a message? I'll see that she gets it.
It's interesting how drastically this voiceover impacts the film, turning an innocent young girl into a vile, evil demon. It creates a chilling dissonance, reminding us that even the most pure aren't impervious to corruption, demonic or otherwise. It acts as the entire crux of the film, and it all rests on McCambridge's performance.
Your mother sucks cocks in hell, Karis, you faithless slime.
Now, with a voice this iconic, how did the filmmakers follow it up? Do you attempt to recreate it, or go a different direction? Well, it seems the filmmakers decided to go with the succubus route.
Be joined with us, Father.
Reinforce themes of the corruption of innocence and instilling despair in those attempting to help the helpless? Fuck all that shit. Let's roll with demonic seduction via a minor.
Kill her.
Oh my god, this is so uncomfortable. Throughout the many rewrites this film underwent, this scene happened to be one of them. Kinda. Apparently, there were new storyboards of this scene that were more explicit and offensive. So much so that Linda Blair protested.
But it was enough to upset me that I went to somebody and said, whatever ugliness y'all want to bring into it, that's not going to happen. So what you see in the film with her turning into the seductive demon, so to speak, is that's as far as we went.
Was Richard Burton going to fuck her? Or was she going to flash her tits or something?
And it's this whole seductive type of thing. I'm 17 years old, for God's sakes. It was weird.
Let's go back to Sharon and Jean for a moment. Jean eventually makes it out of the car, just to find Sharon splashing her toes in gasoline. She then steps forward and cracks a headlight, lighting herself ablaze, just like the Spanish woman from the beginning of the film.
Sharon!
Alright, that's enough out of them. Lamont begins throwing Reagan around the room, shoving her up against the closet door.
The wings are brushing me. The wings are brushing. The wings are brushing me. They're brushing.
Succubus Reagan seems to be quite enjoying this, until Kokumo speaks through good Reagan somehow.
We like to call her the good locust. She was evolved to resist the brushing of the wings.
So finally, all of this good locust talk is coming full circle. Succubus Reagan and good/Kokumo Reagan attempt to persuade Lamont to pick a side between good and evil. And as Sharon burns outside, good Reagan mimics the voice of the Spanish woman.
Okay.
This snaps Lamont out of it, embracing the good Reagan.
You must tear out her evil heart.
Is that really the reason for the heart fingering earlier? Lamont chokeslams Succubus Reagan onto the bed, with both of them screaming out, Suddenly, an entire swarm of locusts fly across the Washington Capitol building as Jean runs around the Warner Brothers Georgetown streets, calling for help, until she notices the locusts too. From here on out, we get the sequel's attempt to one-up the exorcism from the first film, and it's so blatantly obvious that's what they're doing. The bed is shaking as usual until the swarm of locusts burst through the window and engulfs the entire room. Regan stands up amidst their fight as another swarm of locusts burst through another window, engulfing the room even more. Back outside with Jean and Sharon's charred body, she notices the walls of the house crack open and begin falling apart.
Hey guys, look, isn't our exorcism scene so much more epic than the originals?
The house continues to fall apart as Lamont just starts punching her in the fucking face. Then the entire floor comes apart. This is seriously ridiculous, like we've jumped over 12 sharks by this point. Then Lamont rips out Succubus Regan's heart, even though I have no idea who the fuck this is. Shouldn't this be Regan? Like, the actual Regan? Since Pazuzu's actually still inside her, I think. The entire house starts crumbling as various Regans fall down the stairs. The roof collapses. Locusts burrow inside Regan's nose, who starts doing some stupid fucking dance here. Oh, wait! She's calming down the swarm, like Kokumo, like the good locust. Do you get it now, everyone? Do you fucking get it? All the locusts stop flying around, just crawling around on the floor now, until they just fade from existence altogether. Lamont casually walks away from the rubble, meeting up with Jean, who holds Sharon's body, giving her last rites. Regan, from the other side of the street, witnesses this happening.
Sharon. Regan.
An enemy of the human race is subdued.
Jean walks over to Regan, with tears in her eyes, apologizing.
Regan? I'm sorry. I understand now. The world won't. Not yet.
Jean and Lamont embrace. Then Jean tells him to take Regan with him. Why can't she stay with you? He was just about to fuck the demon version of this 17-year-old. So they just walk into the distance as the police arrive, and seemingly every single person living on this street too. It took you all that long to hear the complete destruction of an entire house and swarm of locusts to come out and investigate? As the movie comes to a close, Jean stands silent to police questioning, with the flashing lights and ding from the hypnosis machine ringing.
Here? Is anyone inside?
Hold on. Is this implying what I think it is? You know what? I'm not even gonna speculate on this movie anymore. It doesn't deserve it. Fuck it, I'm done.
Today, wherever I look, I see only evil. God has fallen silent. Evil is a spiritual being, alive and living, perverted and perverting, weaving its way insidiously into the very fabric of life. I'm not obsessed, I'm not. I admit that I'm fascinated by it. I know the dangers. Father Merrin himself was afraid that he'd slip into admiration.
How about adulation?